Welcome to this video where I'll do a review of the examiner's report from the March-June 2024 Performance Management Sit-In. I'm Richard Guyver. I'm the ACCA Performance Management Tutor on the FME Learn Online platform. So why would it be useful to watch this review if you're due to sit the PM exam? By watching this review, we're going to try and get inside the mind of the examiner, find out what the examiner is looking for, what frustrates the examiner. Often they test those to see if students are picking up on those topics and areas that the examiner thinks they should be. We'll look at an approach to some tricky questions. These are actual questions used in an exam, so they're a really good example of the recent syllabus. And where relevant, we'll look for common pitfalls to avoid. We'll look at the distractors that were present in the Section A and Section B questions and why they were distractors, and also use of the exam platform, looking for shortcuts, looking for ways to save time, to optimize our approach to an exam and take a strategic approach so that we make sure we're getting a good return on investment in the time we spend doing things in the exam. Because what we don't want to do is find that we're doing repetitive tasks or tasks that aren't ultimately going to lead to more marks. The plan is, as per the examiner's report, there were 4 Section A MCQs. We'll look at those. They covered various topic areas, including relevant costing, value for money in the public sector, learning rate and learning effect, and controls for information security. And then we've got a whole Section B question, all 5 parts, where we're going to look at pricing decisions and decision-making techniques. And then there's 2 Section C questions. One is Venhosp, which is about budgeting and control and linear regression. And then another one, Caroline, which is on performance measurement and control and divisional performance and transfer pricing. So here's the first Section A question. What I always recommend is look at what we're being asked for first. We need to find the relevant cost of material to fulfill the customer order to the nearest whole dollar. So Daily Co needs 600 kilograms of material to fulfill an order, and that order is due in 1 month's time. It currently has no material K in inventory, but expects to have 200 kilograms of material J in inventory in 1 month's time. Material J is not perishable and will have no alternative use other than to sell it for scrap at $28 a kilogram, and the 200 kilograms it has could be converted into material K in 1 month's time at a cost of $6 per kilogram. The current purchase price of K is $30 a kilogram, and it's expected to rise to $38 in 1 month's time. But material K is perishable, and normally 25% of stored material is lost per month. And I'm not surprised some people struggled with this. There's a lot of information in this question. So I'm going to use the exam platform Scratchpad because this is a Section A question. And these are the resources that would be available. We'd have the Scratchpad and the calculator. So my approach to this would be to look at what options we have in order to get this material K that we need. We need 600 kilograms of K in 1 month's time. Option 1, we could buy it now. It would cost us $30 a kilogram, but we would lose 25% of whatever we purchase because it's perishable. So our calculation is $30. We need at the end of the month 100%, and because 25% is lost, we multiply by 100 over 75. That comes to $40 per kilogram. Option 2, we can buy in 1 month at $38 per kilogram. So already option 2 is better than option 1. And then option 3 was to do the conversion. It will cost us $6 per kilogram to convert J, which is held in inventory. And we're also going to forego the $28 scrap that we would get for that. So that's $34. However, there's only 200 kilograms of that in inventory. So we can either spend $34 but a maximum of 200 kilograms, or $38 or $40. There's no indication there's any restriction on option 2 here. So our calculation for our 600 we need is going to cost us $34 for 200 kilograms. And then the remaining 400 kilograms is going to cost us $38. So using the calculator, just simply type that in, and that gives us 22,000. So this question was around relevant costing, which is in syllabus area C. Okay, on to question 2. This was a question on value for money in the public sector, which is part of syllabus area E. And we were asked which of the performance measures would be used to measure economy. Economy is one of the 3 E's of value for money. And out of our options to choose, I can quickly see that number 2 appears in 3 of them. My approach would be to look at number 2 first, because if number 2 is not one of the performance measures, then we automatically know that C is the answer. The reason I do that is if I'm running out of time, I get to an answer more quickly. However, if I've got time, I would cross-check in case I've made a mistake. So ACCA Care is a government-funded organisation which provides postnatal care for first-time mothers who require additional support before returning home with their new baby. Workers at ACCA Care are mainly full-time staff, but occasionally temporary staff from a local employment agency have to be brought in at great expense. The performance measures below are used by the management of ACCA Care to monitor performance as part of the value for money framework. So looking at number 2 first, direct staff costs as a percentage of total operating costs. We're looking at economy within the value for money context. Economy can be thought of how we minimize the cost of the inputs into this system, into this process, while still achieving the quality and amount of output required. So the focus on economy is around the cost. And number 2 here, direct staff costs as a percentage of total operating costs, is a measure of economy. So we can't shortcut, we do now need to go for the others. Number 1 there, number of occupied beds as a percentage of total beds. This is a measure of efficiency. If only 10% of the beds that are available are being used, then we're not using that resource to its maximum. So 1 is efficiency, we can rule that one out. 3, full-time staff hours as a percentage of total staff hours. This is also a measure of efficiency because we know that most of the staff are full-time, and if we're not using full-time staff in this organisation, then the expensive temporary staff are brought in. So the higher that ratio of full-time staff as a percentage of total staff hours, that's a more efficient use of the resource. And that bottom one, food cost per meal, is an actual cost. So that's a measure of economy. So the correct answers are 2 and 4, and we can see that was option B there. Okay, let's move on to question 3. So we need to calculate here the expected incremental time for the 8th batch of the new product to 1 decimal place. And the question is that Venhosp Co is providing a new product and expects its workforce to experience an 85% learning curve in production. The estimated labour time for the first batch of the new product is 260 hours. And the estimated cumulative average time per batch for the 8th batch is 159.83. And it tells us to use the learning index for an 85% learning curve, and it gives us the value of minus 0.234. So this comes from syllabus area D, which is on learning rate and learning effect. And because it's a calculation, I'm going to go back to the exam platform. I always think it's good practice to leave a big gap between questions. Then if you have to go back to the scratch pad to check something, it's easier to find where each question starts and ends. Now, the learning curve is one of the few formulae you're given in the PM exam. And the learning curve equation is y equals ax to the power of b. We need the time for the 8th batch. I think some students struggle with some of the wording around this. It tells us here the estimated cumulative average time per batch for the 8th batch is 159.83. What that means is this organisation will make 8 batches. It will add together the total time for those 8 batches and divide by 8, and that time will be 159.83. Because of the learning curve, because they get faster and faster, the more batches they do, the smaller this number should get, because the 9th batch should take less time than the 8th batch, and the 10th batch should take less time than the 9th batch. And what we can infer from that is when we do our calculation to find how long it takes for the 8th batch, just the 8th batch, it has to be less than this. And so if you were struggling with the calculations, what you can do in the exam is eliminate A and B here, because it cannot take longer to do the 8th batch than it takes on average to do the first 8 batches. You can reduce your options down to 2. Ideally, you do the calculation, but there's a good exam technique where you can increase your chances of getting the answer correct. We need to calculate the cumulative average time for the first 7 batches. So we're using y equals ax to the power of b. A is the time taken for the first unit of output, which is 260 hours. X is the number of batches in our calculation, which is 7. And b is the index of learning, and it tells us is minus 0.234. Okay, so to do the calculation, 260 multiplied by 7 to the power of minus 0.234. However, I'm using the practice platform and there's a bug in the calculator, so when I do the calculation it doesn't work, but that would work in the exam. So I'll have to use a different calculator just for this. And there are sometimes differences between this platform and the real exam. So this tells us the cumulative average time for the 7th batch is 164. It's bigger than here, which is what we'd expect. but that's for the first 7, so we need to multiply by 7, and that gives us the total time for 7 batches. And then we need to subtract that from the total time for 8 batches. I know it's 159.83 for the cumulative. So if I multiply that by 8, then I've got the time for the 8th. And so the difference is 124.34. I'm not worried about the negative because I subtracted the total time for 8 away from the total time from 7. And here, answer D, 124.3. Okay, this is question 4 from section A. This is from syllabus area A, and it's around controls necessary for information security. And we're asked which 2 of the following controls are likely to be of use to this company. Basile company uses the services of a number of market research consultants based in different geographical regions in which it operates. These consultants are provided with hard copies of designs for new products, sent in sealed packages via a courier due to their commercially sensitive nature. To further ensure that details of new products are not leaked, the consultants are required to work using non-networked computers and to save all market research findings on a password-protected hard drive that is again sent by courier. We need to choose 2 of the following controls. A. Anti-spyware software program is not going to be suitable for this because anti-spyware stops third parties trying to get into our system. But this system is isolated from any network, so it will be of no benefit. A lockable cabinet or safe. They've got hard copies of materials which are commercially sensitive, so being able to lock them away is a very important security measure. B is correct. A firewall, for the same reason that A isn't correct, a firewall is not going to help because they're not on a network. A confidentiality contract. We need to get these consultants to commit to keep this material confidential. So the correct answer is B and D. Okay, now we're on to the section B question. We'll do all 5 parts. This is around a company called Venhosp Co. And this section B question is on pricing decisions and decision-making techniques. And it's from syllabus area C. I'm going to go through these in the order they come. In an actual exam, I wouldn't do that for various reasons. I always try and seek out what I call the outlier. There's often an outlier in a section B question, and it's low-hanging fruit. And what I try and do is find that first, bank those marks, bank some time, and then I can use that time for the rest of the questions. But I will do them in order here. So the first question, we're asked, using the optimal pricing approach, what should the selling price of the quick psych be in order to maximize profits? Venhosp Co makes and sells a range of fitness equipment for use in gyms and customers' homes. It currently produces a stationary fitness bicycle called a quick psych, and the quick psych has a demand function as given here and a variable cost per unit of $230. The company has also been developing another type of stationary fitness bike called the Fit Psych, which is about to launch. It's commissioned some research which has established that a price of $500 for the Fit Psych would lead to 20,000 units being sold. The research also noted for every $8 increase in price, the demand of the Fit Psych would be expected to fall by 1,000 units. It also sells 48,000 sets of hand weights each year. Based on this activity level, selling price and cost information for the weights is given here. The demand function for the hand weights is given at the bottom there, and Venhosp has 75 sets in inventory and wants to sell them all in the coming year. So there's a fair amount of information there, and often in section B, we only use a part of each bit of information for each part of the question. So this is around quick psych. We need to identify the selling price of quick psych in order to maximize profits. So quick psych is the current bike, and it has the demand function here and the variable cost per unit here. If we go back to the formula sheet, we are given the demand function here of P equals A minus BQ, where B is the change in price over the change in quantity, and A is the price when Q is 0. We're also given the marginal revenue is A minus 2BQ. This top formula, P equals A minus BQ, was given to us in the questions as 893 minus 0.09Q. So we know our figures for A and B from that. A is 893 and B is 0.009. It also told us the variable cost per unit is 230, and the optimum price to charge is when marginal cost equals marginal revenue, and the marginal cost is the 230. So we use this one at the bottom. We know that 230 equals A, which we're given above, minus 2 times B. Then it's just a matter of rearranging that. So Q equals 893, take away the 230, divide that by 0.018. This gives us the volume we'd sell in order to maximize our profit. And then we need to plug back into here. I would keep my calculator as is and just carry forward. So I multiply by 0.009 now, and I subtract from 893, and that gives me a price of P as minus 561.5. Again, I'm ignoring the minus, it's just because of the way I've done the calculation. You could clear the memory and type it in the correct order, and you wouldn't have to deal with the minus, but I'm quite comfortable with that. Just means I'm a bit quicker and less likely to make a mistake by pressing the wrong button. So 561.5. Option C here is 562, so that's the correct one. The distractors here, the $230 is if you correctly calculated Q but then used an incorrect equation to calculate price. Option B is if you arranged it incorrectly and ends up with the wrong value of Q. And option D is if you calculated Q correctly but then used it incorrectly to obtain the price. So question 2, based on the research commissioned, at what selling price would demand for the fit cycle be 0? So the fit cycle was this second option, and we were told that demand would be 20,000 if price was 500, and for every $8 increase in price, demand would fall by 1,000. The two ways I think you can approach this. The first way, we know the demand function as we've got here, P equals A minus BQ. And the question is effectively asking us to find the value of A. And so we use the information it gives us. Price of 500, we don't know A, we're trying to find that. B is the change in price over the change in quantity. And we were told that an $8 increase would lead to a $1,000 decrease. And we've got 20,000 units at that price. So we rearrange it for A. So we've got 8 divided by 1,000, multiplied by 20,000, plus 500 is 660. The other way you could do this, and this is the way I would personally do it, I've got 20,000 units at 500. I know for every drop of 1,000, that would be caused by an $8 increase. To go from 20,000 to 0, that's 20 drops. 20 times 8 is 160. And then add on to the 500. It's exactly the same, but that second approach is more of a logical approach rather than a mathematical approach like the first one. So question 3 here is another calculation. If it sets a selling price in order to sell the 75,000 sets of hand weights in inventory, what would be the total profit earned? So the weights were the bit at the bottom. It sells 48,000 per year at this selling price and variable cost and fixed cost. Here's the demand function, and it's got 75,000 sets that it wants to sell in the coming year. It gives us the demand function here in the question. And we want to sell 75,000, and so that means Q is 75,000. So I've typed it into the calculator. When you've got this little arrow, what that means is you can use the cursors to go back and see. So I've got 84, exactly as I've written here. Take away that part of the calculation, gives a price of 9. So we calculated the price. Now we need to calculate the contribution. The variable cost per unit was given to us as 5, and we know we're selling 75,000 units. So our total contribution is 300,000. However, we need to take into account our fixed costs. When we were selling 48,000 units, the fixed costs were 2 per unit. Fixed costs stay fixed. So even if we sell more units, they shouldn't change. So then we subtract the fixed costs here, leaving us a profit of 204,000. And that was answer B. The distractor C was if you didn't take off the fixed costs. The distractor A was if you assumed it was $2 fixed cost per unit at the high volume of sales, i.e. you didn't really count it as a fixed cost. And the 675 distractor D is if you just calculated the total revenue. Okay, question 4, got a bit of additional information here. Rumpf has also developed a new electronic fitness device for tracking daily activity. Which of the following facts about this new product would indicate that a market skimming pricing strategy would be suitable when it's launched? This question has nothing to do with this information given. It's completely independent. I can see 1 appears in 3 of these, as does 2, as does 4. So I don't think there's any real benefit in trying to choose an order to go through. With short life cycle products, price skimming is a suitable approach because you need to make those profits quickly. 1 is correct, so we can eliminate D. 2, the company has incurred high development costs. Once again, because with price skimming you aim to make profits quickly, high development cost is one of the justifications for it, so that eliminates B, so it's either A or C now. Statement 3, the company wants to discourage new entrants into the market. So price skimming is where we start at a higher price to capture all the people that are willing to pay that price, then decrease the price, capture all the people willing to pay that price, and so on. The opposite would be required in order to prevent new entrants. because if we went in at a high price, a new entrant can come in at a low price. So in order to discourage new entrants, we'd use a penetration strategy where we go in at a low price, capture that market share as much as we can, and then that prevents new entrants. So 3 is incorrect, which means we've now narrowed it down to C, but we'll look at part 4. The fitness device is currently the first of its kind. Any sort of innovative or new or unique product also supports a market skimming strategy. So the correct answer is 1, 2 and 4, so that's C. And then finally, question 5, which of the following statements about price elasticity of demand is or are true? Again, this has nothing to do with the information here, it's just the same topic area. Statement 1, price elasticity of demand is measured as the percentage change in price divided by the percentage change in demand. This is something you either know or you don't know. This is false. It's actually the inverse of that. So price elasticity of demand is the change in demand as a percentage divided by the change in price as a percentage. So 1 is not true. 2, if the price elasticity of demand indicates that demand is elastic, prices should be increased in order to maximize profit. If we've got elastic demand, that indicates that customers are sensitive to price changes, which means a small change in price leads to a disproportionately larger fall in demand, and that leads to a negative impact on total revenue. So once again, the opposite is true. If demand is elastic, we shouldn't be increasing prices in order to maximize profit. So both of these are false. I hope you found value in that debrief of section A and B. The section C debriefs I do on my tuition platform, and within my tuition I do debriefs of many questions. I've got a series of video lectures and tuition notes, and then also a separate revision section which goes through many questions, exam techniques. Students submit homework which I mark and give them customized feedback to help them. There's also a couple of mock exams which I mark and give customized feedback, and all my students have direct contact with me so they can ask me questions. You can find me in the FME Learn Online. I'll leave a link. You can also WhatsApp me if you've got any questions about the course. And I'm part of FME Learn Online. We're an ACCA Platinum approved learning provider. And I also offer a unique challenge. I scored 97% when I did my performance management exam. If anyone can beat me, if they can get 98, 99 or 100%, I'll not only reimburse their course fees fully, I'll give them a 50% bonus. So you get 150% of your course fees back if you can beat me. And I think the reason I got that score was not just about technical knowledge, it's because I have a very sound approach to exam technique. I hope you saw some of that coming out in this debrief that we just went through. If you're going to study PM and you could benefit from not only the technical knowledge, but that exam approach, those time-saving approaches that I can offer, that's all incorporated into my course. So go to the link below, or if you like, WhatsApp me if you need to find out more. So hopefully, again, this has been a useful look at the section A and B in that March and June 2024 exam. Thank you very much for listening.